I'm just going to open this evening with a few comments. Firstly, I want to say a couple of thank yous, and firstly to say thank you to Professor Helen Miller for inviting me to chair this round table as part of the CIMTR series of research seminars. It's a great honour, and the process of planning together has been at once creative and stimulating. So thanks a lot. And also thank you to Sarah Crabtree, who, as you can tell already, is working hard in the background with Zoom technology, and it's an enormous help. Thank you, Sarah. So, as you will see from the abstract, at the heart of this round table is the theme of celebration and recognition. This evening, we're going to hear from a group of women from 4 different continents across the world, each of whom have distinguished careers within academia and research, as well as having held eminent positions within the world communities of arts therapies. In different ways, having developed music therapy and drama therapy as new subject areas within academia, as women, they are all pioneers. As you will hear from some speakers, such achievements, we must note, have not been without the influence, collaboration, and recognition of men. And many of us, men and women, are already familiar with their work, and as such have benefited from their achievements. But we've not always heard them talk about their experiences or perspectives as women. In the same spirit, we have further invited women from younger generations of drama therapy and music therapy who've been involved in the overall conception and planning of today and are based here at Anglia Ruskin University and members of CIMTR. So, I'm going to introduce each speaker briefly in turn. They've all generously agreed to speak for a short amount of time on some big topics, and we thank them for this. I'll be attempting to keep us all to time, to allow time for the respondents and further questions and answers. Indeed, this round table has many voices, and I'm really delighted to welcome you all. We look forward to hearing your short talks, and we look forward to hearing the responses, which will no doubt leave us wanting to hear more. And I also welcome you, the audience. And we look forward to your comments and questions, which, as Sarah's explained, you can put in the Q&A section. We look forward to a fine 90 minutes. Okay, so let's begin. And we're delighted to begin with a video presentation from Professor Denise Grouchy. Denise is Professor Emerita at Melbourne Conservatorium of Music and Faculty of Fine Arts and Music, the University of Melbourne in Australia. And as I say, she's speaking to us via video. Thank you very much, Denise. We welcome you and hope that you might see this later on.
Hello, and greetings to you from Melbourne in Australia. I am going to attempt to share my screen. I'd like to start by thanking Professor Helen Miller very much for this invitation to be part of this prestigious panel on such an auspicious day. Thank you, Helen. I am making this recording from my home in Blackrock, Melbourne, Australia. And these are the lands of the Boonwurrung people. So I would like to acknowledge the traditional elders of the Boonwurrung and to pay my respects to them, past and present and into the future. My journey with music therapy began in 1968, so quite a while ago now. And it was when I was an undergraduate student at the University of Melbourne, and Dr. Percy Jones had come across the Journal of Music Therapy, the American one, and had asked the librarian to subscribe to that journal. And as a third-year student, I had come across the journal and thought, that's what I want to do. So I travelled to Michigan State University and studied with Bob Unkefer, as he's known. He had a humanistic approach to music therapy, I'm glad to say. And so this is what I brought back with me when I returned to Melbourne in 1971. It was Dr. Percy Jones again, who knew someone who knew someone who knew a psychiatrist at Larundel Psychiatric Hospital. And that's how the position was created for me in 1971. I remember the first day I was there because it was an auspicious day. The paymaster was very happy to tell me it was the day that we achieved equal pay for women. It would have been November 1971. So at Larundel, I was introducing music as a form of therapy to 550 patients. So admissions, acute, medium, long-term stay, a special ward for Huntington's disease, and a therapeutic community. And I was there for 10 years in a sole position. The next thing to set up was the training at the University of Melbourne. And so we began talking about creating a specialisation within the undergraduate degree, specialising in years 3 and 4. It was Dr. Percy Jones again who facilitated those early discussions. And the dean at the time, Max Cook, brought it to fruition despite the objections from the Faculty of Medicine. I was appointed in 1980 and I was in a sole position until 1991, so 11 years on my own there. I remember sort of creating a bubble around myself and the music therapy students to protect the course, I guess, from threats. And there were threats. One of the professors was dead against this course, didn't believe that it belonged in a university, and so the course was placed under review. But it took 18 months for that review to come about, so there were obstructions along the way. The task was, of course, to introduce music as a therapy within the Faculty of Music that prided itself on performance perfection and scholarship. So it took a while, and there were people who were supportive and people who were not supportive. The next step was to establish research, and in 1999 I set up the National Music Therapy Research Unit. That's the logo on the left-hand side, showing the two streams, that research and clinical practice would be inextricably linked. And I based it on the Aalborg model that I'd seen back in 1995 when it was under the NORFA funding. And this is when you bring the PhD students and, for us, the master's research students together for intensive seminars. And it was managed to get funding twice a year for that and brought overseas visitors. Tony Wigram, Cheryl DeLeo was a regular visitor, and others, Barbara Wheeler, Brynjolf Stigger, many, but a balance really between male and female, I have to say. And then in 2002, we established the International Consortium of Music Therapy Research Universities to enable multi-site international trials with larger participant numbers. And I was very proud to be part of the very first one. This was the music therapy for mental health care clients with low therapy motivation. And so there were 2 hospitals in Norway, 2 in Austria, and the Sunshine Hospital in Melbourne, Australia. It was great to get that underway. And so we come to the expansion at the University of Melbourne. In 2006, we converted the undergraduate degree course into a coursework master's degree with a research component. And that brought about a number of changes. First of all, more men seemed to come into the course at that point, and they came from diverse backgrounds. One came with a Bachelor of Economics degree, but with very good music skills. So with the masters, there was a bit more flexibility than when it was an undergraduate degree. We also started attracting a lot of international students, and at one point there, 30% of our students were internationals, mainly from Hong Kong and Singapore, Taiwan, less so from China and Korea. The course these days, and of course last year all of the training was done via Zoom. And finally, last year in 2020, we were very pleased to appoint Dr. Jenna Kim to the team. And so over the years, I think what has sustained me is an unshakable belief that music therapy enhances people's lives. And that's built, of course, on my own great love of music. And I will close by acknowledging the other women who will be speaking today. We're all great colleagues and friends, and I thank them for the support of me over these years as well. Enjoy the rest of the day. Farewell.
Okay. Thank you very much, Denise. That's a really it's really fascinating to hear how it all began and how it all began for you. That's a lovely talk to start us off. Okay, so next I would like to introduce Dr. Ditty Doctor, an old colleague of mine from Roehampton. Ditty is at Anglia Ruskin University, Cambridge, and Codarts University of the Arts, Rotterdam, in the Netherlands. So welcome, Ditty. And I should also say that Ditty is a drama therapist.
Okay. Thanks very much, Rachel, and thanks very much, Helen, for inviting me. And I am here with two hats on. There's both a drama and a dance therapy hat, as you will notice.
Yes.
International Women's Day 2021, according to a World Health Authority in Africa voice, is basically aims to recognize the efforts of women across the world, around the world, to shape a more equal future. Now, in COVID times, that's not easy, because issues around women's health and ability, contraceptive access, caring responsibilities, violence against women, racial inequality, as well as the impact on female health frontline workers and migrant labourers, they've all really intersected to exacerbate inequality. And how do we recognise the efforts of women to work towards equality, particularly women in academia, particularly arts therapists in academia? Behind me, you see a sample of the professional mothers and daughters in drama therapy and dance therapy, because I'm sitting here with those two professional hats on in terms of arts therapies. On the left and right of me, you see my mother and daughter, because it is the passing on of knowledge and skills backwards and forwards across generations. That is one of the areas I wanted to think of. The other area is the therapeutic relationship as an intercultural space, as well as some examples of recent projects that have helped to bring out, focus on inclusion and bring out hidden voices that haven't been heard that much. Within my career, my research focus has been on intercultural practice. And it's important to consider the therapeutic relationship as an intercultural space. We're reminded daily of the traces we leave on each other and have become increasingly aware of the different impact of systems we encounter across racial and economic lines. Intercultural research aims to offer a useful perspective in how culture and difference informs care. As I said, I'll look at some of those projects, but again, I want to list some of the difficulties in the current context, because we're in a period of rising global conservatism, nationalism, climate crisis, increasing displacement, as well as, of course, the pandemic, and resurging efforts to address racial justice. And within that, I've always been very interested in what is foregrounded, what is made visible in the theory and practice and research of the arts therapies, but also what remains invisible, what remains hidden. I'm a white, cisgendered voice, very privileged, who in her lifetime has been impacted by inequalities as a disabled working class migrant woman, the first of her family to go to university, which has always made me aware of the arts therapies as a very privileged profession, because you have to train on a postgraduate level. The mother founders behind me in the UK and elsewhere passed their knowledge and skills to their professional daughters, and in turn learned from them. So at its best, each generation learns from each other. And that has actually led to increasing advocacy and action. Recent examples in drama therapy are the Intercultural Good Practice Guidelines that were developed by the North American and British drama therapy associations, and also an upcoming special issue on joint collaboration between two drama therapy journals on hidden voices in terms of ethnic diversity and which voices are remaining less heard. Sam Adams there and Britton Williams, just above my head, are co-editing that particular issue. Nisha Sajnani, who you'll see on the left, my left, your right, has started the World Alliance of Drama Therapists to help more international collaboration. And again, issues about inclusion are part of that. Now, I'll step aside so you can actually see these women, these mothers, daughters, and granddaughters. And just wanted to conclude by saying that feminist and critical race theory has influenced the conceptualization of diversity and power differentials. And Nisha Sajnani and I are actually co-authoring an intercontinental study of how intersectional variables impact on the drama therapy client-therapist relationship. And it's been fascinating to analyze survey, interview, and vignette data, exploring power differentials, and collaborate and receive the help and learn from drama therapists from many different countries and continents. At the same time, as though that type of openness, some barriers are increasing. So I want to conclude by sharing a different image with you, which is an image of the wall between Mexico and the United States. At the end of the Second World War, there were 7 border walls around the world. By the time the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, there were 15. Now, in 2021, there are at least 77. This particular art project at the Mexico-US wall allows adults and children from both sides of the wall to play together. And we thought of it as a good metaphor for arts therapy work, to play with walls and power on life's seesaw, aiming to equalize, whilst being aware of the impact of the different space we're playing in. To conclude, I want to thank you and just express the hope that in future there will be more male and female and other gender arts therapists sharing their work to create a more equal future.
That's great. I wonder if you might be able to put the book in the chat or give it to Sarah, title of the book in the chat.
Do that.
That would be great. But,
yeah, I'll do that for Sarah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So we move on now to welcome Dr. Sumati Sundar from Chennai School of Music Therapy, where she is director in India. And Sumati is also fellow of the IMC University of Applied Sciences in Austria. So welcome, and look forward to your talk.
Thank you, Dr. Rachel, and good evening to everyone. And wish you all a very happy Women's Day. And I'm super delighted and honored to be the part of this panel, August panel. And I thank Anglia Ruskin and Dr. Helen Odell-Miller for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this wonderful event. And at the outset, my salutations to all the other August members of this panel for their inspirational work. And many of you whom I know personally and also from your work, my salutations to you. for your contributions in your regions of the world and also globally. And secondly, music therapy is what it is today because of many strong women in academia. And I would like to show my gratitude, to offer my salutations to the people, the scholars who are outside the panel, maybe as attendees, and accept my salutations for your wonderful contributions. And now we are in a very beautiful moment celebrating Women's Day internationally. And how do we celebrate this? I was just thinking, what would be the best way to celebrate apart from, talking about our stories? We have always been, as music therapists, analyzing our strengths and weaknesses as part of our music therapy practice, teaching, and also research. And we have always been concerned about improving our weaknesses, thinking about our weaknesses, and always, trying to be determined to push ourselves, to succeed more and more. And we never much bother about our strengths and our successes. And is it not a time for us to, just celebrate our successes? There are many jobs that we may do with ease, but we may not know that, we do it that with ease because we are more concerned about how do we improve ourselves. So I thought that this is a time that we really have to celebrate our successes, little successes or big successes, and also our strengths in whatever way, we have felt about ourselves, because this will be a motivation for us. This will be a way to raise our self-esteem as women in academia and outside, and a way to increase our self-esteem so that, in my feeling that nothing comes very easily to us, whether it's a junior position in academia or a senior position in academia. We have lots of falls and, things that we have to fall and then get up stronger, maybe 3 times stronger every time we fall. And these kind of, gestures to pat ourselves a little, think about our successes, love ourselves, and also, to acknowledge the successes that we had is a way by which we can celebrate, International Women's Day for our sake. So I would request all the participants to just reflect for a few moments on our successes and our strengths that we have never been much bothered about, but just give a thought about it and boost our self-esteem. And as far as my experience in academia is concerned, I'm an entrepreneur since a decade, and I'm the founder director of Chennai School of Music Therapy, a corporate entity registered under the Government of India. And I have been working to develop music therapy training. And the first level of entry-level training in India is 1-year course of music therapy with around 750 hours of internship training in a hospital. So that's on one side that I work with Chennai School of Music Therapy, and I'm directing the postgraduate diploma. And since the last decade, I have been the professor and director of the Center for Music Therapy Education and Research, a unit of Shri Balaji Vidyapeeth, a health sciences university, a medical university, wherein I had the opportunity to develop and establish and advance music therapy, education and training, clinical practice, and research. So that was a wonderful experience for me for about 7 to 8 years until COVID times, that I was able to develop 1-year postgraduate diploma in music therapy, a 2 years master's degree in medical music therapy, culminating into a PhD program, and the first internship, national internship training program for about 750 hours, so that people could come and take up internship in a hospital, and also developed an observership program so that national participants and, enabling national participants and overseas participants to observe the clinical practice that is being, it was established as a part of medical care. One of the unique aspects of the development of music therapy in India is that it is developed as a part of medical care, regular medical care on referrals. And you can find when you come to India, there is an outpatient department for music therapy, that music for patients could drop in outpatients department and could seek music therapy services on referrals from different clinical departments. So that is on one side. And there are opportunities to work in an interdisciplinary collaborations with the different clinicians, because the training program and the clinical practice and research emanating from a hospital which is attached to a medical university. And coming to the challenges, there are two important challenges, I would say, working as a director and professor in Balaji Vidyapeeth and also in Chennai School. India is a country where, we have a lot of cultural diversities and many traditional healing practices, which until, recently was considered to be music therapy practices until the development of training programs, came into being. So one of the important challenges in one side is to work with integrating these traditional healing practices, because it exists as a very strong belief systems and within the values of the clients with whom we work. And on the other side, it is developing as a part of medical care and developing as a part of medical university, where the thoughts and where, the importance is more on science. So, there was a creation of another paradox in music therapy from India: tradition versus science, or tradition versus evidence-based practice. Building evidence-based practice, because that we are babies crawling, and maybe it's around 6 to 7 years, and we have always been felt that it's very difficult to the pressure to develop, sustain, and advance music therapy is very high for the people who are in academia, though they are very few in number, the women. And as in any other Western countries, it's the women who take more of music therapy and men less, but the number of academicians or the women in academia is very few in number. I can say it is below 10, because the first master's degree student came out of and the first PhD scholar is yet to submit the dissertation. So the challenge on one side is to balance the traditions and the use of traditional healing practices, which has been passed on from generations to generations without asking any questions, which remain as an art, with developing it as an evidence-based practice as a part of medical care. So that was the challenge, and the resources are so limited, and we have to operate within a very limited resource. And I would say that when I was there in Balaji Vidyapeeth, I was the only professor, and I could say that was the only professor's position in the entire country to be working in a university, and they were tutors and lecturers.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I have to come in. It's such a horrid job. I have to come in and say, pause, but to say thank you very much. We will have to finish that, Samati.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. And it's lovely the way that you sort of frame the talk to reflect on successes. And there's so much that's happened in India, and I look forward to hearing more and hopefully some questions. So thank you very much indeed. Sorry to stop you.
Yeah, thank you.
So moving on, it's my great pleasure now to introduce Professor Inga Nigerson, well known from Denmark, Aalborg University, and she is going to talk to us about, I think, various issues to do with women and Sorry, Inga, I've just run out there, but I'll hand it over to you. We can't hear you. Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being invited to this distinguished panel. I'm really grateful. Maybe I should just start to say that the Aalborg University Music Therapy program is a 5-year full-time program. And we also have an international PhD program and a research clinic in psychiatry, which is closely connected to the university. But I will start with myself today. Reflecting on me being a woman in academia for 40 years, I suppose, has some connections to two of the most important men in my life, my father and my husband. I am raised in a milieu of fundamental religion and non-academic family culture. And I very strongly rebelled and harassed my parents for allowance to be raised like my friends. My father, in his own way, supported me and often said, Inga is walking her own path, but she will always manage well and find her way. This sentence often comes back in my head in challenging situations. My husband, through 37 years, supported me and my career in all matters. I was headhunted back in 1981 for the first full-time position at Aalborg University to build a music therapy program in 1982. I was employed first in a research position, supposed to write a thesis. As a woman, I thought, I can't build a program and do research as a newly educated music therapist without having clinical experiences. I'm not sure if a man would have viewed the situation this way. I told the department from the first day that I intended to use 3 days a week to do clinical work at 3 different institutions with both clients and staff members and discuss with the members how music therapy could be integrated in these institutions and of course document the work and simultaneously build the program. I was allowed to do this on full salary from the university. I also told the department that if they wanted me to build this program, I would make a program in 3 training tracks with equal weight on an academic track, a music track, and a therapeutic training track, including comprehensive self-experience. I think my courage to do this came from my childhood experiences of rebelling. I also told them that if I was not allowed to develop the program under these conditions, I would not be able to take the position. I was allowed to make a trial, even if it was seen as innovative and transgressive. So the program should undergo a comprehensive evaluation after 6 years from the Ministry of Education, and the evaluation turned out positively. Back in 1981, there was a culture at the university that all teaching courses were taught with open doors. At music therapy, we closed and locked the doors and put up a note telling not to disturb when self-experience was taught. Our male colleagues at the faculty seems to be annoyed. One day, a female colleague at the faculty asked me if I was aware that the male colleagues at the faculty board called me and my colleague, Benedikte Skyby, for lesbian self-therapists. I did not know, and I immediately wrote to the dean of the faculty what I was told, and that I really would prefer they told us openly how they thought of us, so we had a chance to answer to such slanders. I never had an answer back, but the female colleague who had told me about it had a serious reprimand for gossiping, a really Me Too case at that time. I think my only male colleagues could use these terms as slanders. Later, I had 2 very supportive and service-minded male colleagues, Tony Vikram and Lars Ole Bunde, who respected the structure of equal weight on the 3 tracks and sensitively added what could be added in the music therapy and academic track. We never had power relation problems at the music therapy education. So to sum up with this, I have had very supportive colleagues, both male and female, in the music therapy milieu, and non-supportive colleagues, mostly males, in leaderships at university. In the Department of Communication and Psychology, where music therapy is placed, there have only been male leaders for 40 years. My compass in academia has been to listen to myself when in doubt and not being afraid of being a bit controversial. An attitude I think was created already in my late childhood. My dear female colleagues have reflected mostly on the balance between being service-minded and career-minded. They think the expectation of women being more service-minded is a part of an often unconscious culture, and we need altogether men and women to be more aware and react on this culture. We all agree with the head of a woman institute called QINFO, a contraction of Women and Information, where they register academia women and their editions in Denmark, when she recently wrote in the media, "Let us be clear, it is not the sex which defines if you are a good leader, but the style of leading and the ability to take care of the interests of the institution and the staff members. When the number of women leaders of companies are still very low, we need to face and acknowledge that something more needs to be done. Instead of buying special measures to fix the women, where women have to take leader courses on the premises of men, the male leaders need to ask themselves what their problems are, since they can't contain the diversity of both men and women leaders together that can create better results. There is a need for greater recognition for women's abilities, so we as a society do not miss their talents." It is my message of the day. We have in the music therapy teachers group once a year a whole day of sharing of whatever is important for each one of us, professional or private challenges, with supportive feedback from the group of colleagues, including those in the music therapy leader positions. And so we try to be a part of each other's ups and downs, which I think really provide well-being for all of us. But we have also trained 58 PhDs and made a lot of research, so it can go hand in hand. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Inga. And of course, Professor Niger Pedersen is well known to many as having been at the heart of the Aalborg PhD program for many, many years. And thank you very much. And I think themes of leadership are so important. It's sort of like you found a crux where we can think about styles and also sort of power bases as well. So thank you very much for your talk. That's lovely. Now I'm delighted to welcome Professor Grouchy from Oslo to speak. Gru is a fellow of the AMI Centre for Research in Music and Health at the Norwegian Academy of Music in Norway. So welcome, Gru.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and it's lovely to be here with my esteemed colleagues. I have organized my reflections under 3 headings. And the first heading is grateful, but not there yet. Today is Women's International Day, the 8th of March. It's a day for remembering and being grateful to the suffragettes, to the women's liberation movement, and to all those women and men working for women's right to vote on equal terms. I am grateful, and still I know very well. 1 in 3 women still experience gender-based violence. And the freedom to choose one's life and professional training is still limited due to economy, color, culture, and gender-based constraints. From a discursive point of view, one might ask, in line with the feminist researcher and philosopher Judith Butler, if traditional feminism itself has contributed to upholding and even reproducing the dominant ideology, that is, thinking about gender as a heteronormativity regime, for example. I know I'm a privileged, white, educated, and middle-class woman. Also, my country is known for its gender balance. Yet for many years I lived with a huge power imbalance in academia. My specialized University of Music hosted 36 male professors, and I was one of 3 female professors. We are not there yet. The second heading is Language and Behavior Create Realities. The 11th of February is the International Day for Women in Science. And in an American, very interesting review, male teachers were most often described as genius and brilliant, while female teachers were most often described as clever and hardworking. Every day we meet with conscious and unconscious attitudes related to gender and gendered language, not least in academia. Already 75 years ago, the Norwegian psychologist and philosopher Inga articulated the master suppression techniques. These techniques are ways to suppress and humiliate opponents indirectly. Being overlooked or ignored, or not least left out, might have nothing to do with you, but it might be your gender. Oppression has many faces, also in 2021. I do recognize men use these oppression techniques. I also know that women use them, and even students I've experienced. My message is clear. Learn how to identify oppression, to act differently. I was the first female with a PhD in music therapy in Norway. I also was the first female professor in music therapy in Norway. So obviously for the last 30 years, I've had different leadership positions in academia. And based on these experiences, my third and final point is we need formative visions rooted in an empowerment philosophy. I suggest we actively use 5 confirmation strategies to empower all people, to empower each other in academia. The first one is be visible. Let your voice be heard and seen, and not least, remember to publish. Point 2. Put the cards on the table. Inform and include people in decisions. 3. Ask questions, as opposed to ridicule of your gender, of your color, of your culture, or your look, or even your argument. 4. Intellectualize, as a counter strategy to put to shame. And 5. Confirm reasonable standards on language and behavior. Summing up, I am grateful, but we are not there yet. Language and behavior create realities. And let us actively use formative visions rooted in an empowerment philosophy. These 3 headings are deeply rooted in ethics, linked to trust, social mission, legitimacy, and women's performance in a broad sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gru. There's a lot there to take in and work on, and yeah, wonderful confirmation strategies. And of course, Gru is well known for her book Relational Music Therapy, and her Remember to Publish is a very good starting point. So thank you, Gru. A lot to think about there. So of our speakers, we come finally we come to Professor Helen O'Dell-Miller, who of course is on home territory at this seminar, and we warmly welcome her as a leading light in Cambridge, I think.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, everybody, and good evening. It's such a joy today to celebrate International Women's Day with you all. And I can't thank you enough for coming, especially the speakers and respondents. I started to plan this, you know, a little bit later than hoped, and partly because of the pandemic, and everyone, apart from one, said, yes, I'm coming, I can come, and it was wonderful. So I hope there's something more to say after your eloquent talks. In setting up the round table, I was thrown back in time to my own transition from being a full-time music therapist for 19 years in the National Health Service, prior to which I trained in 1976 at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama with the pioneer music therapist cellist Juliet Alvin. In the National Health Service in the late 1970s and 1980s, working as a music therapist researcher and latterly arts therapies manager, the therapies departments were predominantly female. Joining an academic department in 1994, and I want to say now thank you to all men, women and colleagues that I've had over the years, I did notice a difference though. All the full-time music department colleagues identified as male, and nearly all the leaders in the university also. It was a culture shock. Students identifying as women, whilst we search for male trainees, have usually outnumbered men in our cohorts. However, we're pleased to recruit people from all over the world. And this slide includes all the countries listed from where students are recruited at ARU. And we celebrated our 25th anniversary a couple of years ago. And these are some of the countries that the speakers came from. But returning to the differences between health settings and academia, in those early days, women academic therapists were sometimes invisible in what seemed to be linear conversations sometimes in meetings, when asking questions such as, well, what do we all think about this? Or, I wonder how we could help that student with her mental health problems. How times have changed. I appreciate the atmosphere was not only the result of gendering, but also of culture, task and environment. A university was not so focused in those days, as obviously a health service must or should be, around caring for people. In my work, I've always focused on the task in hand, and barriers owing to gender did not always occur to me, which I'll come back to. It is positive, I think, that a recent Leaders in Higher Education report shows that 40% of all higher education governing body members in the UK are women, and 27% of governing bodies are chaired by a woman. 5 years ago, a scant 12% of all chairs were women. So although some people tonight have said we have a long way to go, we are moving on. In planning the roundtable, Claire Molyneux, who's a respondent tonight, senior lecturer here, and responding soon, said to me she thought this roundtable needed to celebrate the achievements of women leaders of trainings around the world, who she considered when training as role models, which I'd never really considered. And I think we are doing that today. It also reminded me that during the inception of the MA Music Therapy course, and possibly when Claire was training, I'm not sure, in the early 1990s, Amelia Oldfield, co-founder of the music therapy course at Anglia Ruskin, and I were bringing up 6 children under 5 between us. I emphasize here that for my part, this would not have been possible. 2 of them were mine. nor any of my work achievements without my husband. Returning to the importance of well-being and nurturing, which parenting maybe reminds us of so intensely, I'm mindful of how far we've come and how times have changed. There is more emphasis now upon the importance of well-being and nurture for students and staff in academia, with well-being strategies and departments being commonplace and especially developing since the pandemic. In reflecting upon what has enabled me to persevere in all situations, I think my mother, now aged 98, who studied medicine here in Cambridge University, was an important influence, not only in the minority, but actually barred and contested because many men did not want to include women in academia, as this next slide shows. And my father was also a doctor and very influential as well, but this is quite an amazing story, I think. Women at Cambridge University were not awarded degrees at a ceremony until 1948 onwards. My mother's degree was prior to that. But she never mentioned this until arriving in a gown in the UK style in 1998, when Cambridge University held a ceremony for women to finally receive their degrees, and apologised. This had not deterred her, though, in her medical practice, and I think as a result of her character and as part of a generational phenomena, our upbringing had seemed devoid of specific gender identification, and I am ashamed to admit, and I can hardly believe, that I had, until attending university, no full understanding of the discrimination against women that exists. In this protected environment, having only sisters, I'd attended an all-girls boarding school where the headmistress, a bit similar to my mother, thought women could do anything. I learned backwards about gender discrimination, and I am pleased that in CIMTR, the Cambridge Institute for Music Therapy now, as this slide shows, we have quite a gender-balanced team. And here are the team. I thought I'd just finish by celebrating the ARU music therapy and drama therapy courses and our research institute here at CIMTR now, which has benefited from men and women working together. And these are our research areas of focus, which I normally announce at the beginning of the evening, and I thought I'd save to the end. Interestingly, the investigators prior to the MA Music Therapy inception were men, Professor Ian Gordon, Dr. Bob Reeve, Peter Britton, and Dr. Paul Jackson, within which we then set up and led music therapy. And here are some of the women who were the leaders of the founders and the leaders of the course, and most of whom are here today, I can see. So this is a celebration from 1994 to 2021, and also acknowledging Tony Wigram, who enabled some of the research milieu to develop and be strong. Strong enough that we now have people in our institute undertaking groundbreaking scientific research. And this is when we moved during the making of the new music therapy building, which is here, together with our drama therapy and music therapy colleagues. And you might spot Ditty Doctor there. And I think that's, thank you very much. Just end with a celebration, I think.
Thank you very much, Helen, and thank you very much to all the speakers. So we can't clap them, but we can indicate and say thank you. That's truly wonderful, and there are so many stories from the establishment of these big university departments and the setting up of research centres around the world. And thank you so much to all the speakers who've come from those places. It's great to just sort of like even have that on the map, even in your titles. All your titles sort of speak to so much creation and setting up. there's been some mega themes come up. I won't try and list them all or summarize them all, but I think a lot about visibility and also childhood and rebellion and colleagues, male and female, and visibility, invisibility, privilege and formative experiences. Lots of themes. We just now move to our respondents, and we've just got time for some very short, sadly, just short responses, and we have one or two questions in the chat as well. We'll see how we get on. So I'd like to introduce first of all Eleanor Keeler, to speak. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Rachel. I just want to first say thank you to every speaker tonight. It's been an honour to be on this panel and to hear you speak and to respond now. But to thank also all of the women and all of the people who have blazed the trail for us to be here tonight and for me to be here. Dissy, I really felt connected to your metaphor of the daughter, mother and grandmother in drama therapy, and to be a daughter of drama therapy in the profession right now feels like an honour. So yeah, I took 3 words, well it's supposed to be 3 and it was actually 4 because I couldn't choose, from the presentations this evening that resonated, and the first was unshakable, the second was visible, and the third was contributions. And as I kind of put them all down in a line, I put them together as unshakable, visible contributions. And it kind of gives me goosebumps right now to think of the work that is being done by the people on this panel as unshakable, visible contributions to the arts therapies practices. And yeah, just wow. I also added the word rebel, which I think was Dr. Inga's word, and that was one that really resonated with me as, I suppose, a woman whose path was never laid out in this way, as a first-generation university student who probably never intended to, or it was never decided. It was a hard path to tread. So to rebel against kind of the position I was born into, I suppose, felt really special, and I could have gone on quite a while, but I know we're short on time. Just a quick note on Dissy's work on the intercultural space and the therapeutic relationship as an intercultural space seems like a really important thing to note as a white woman training in a predominantly white profession, to really recognise that what that brings to the therapeutic space and what that brings to our clients. I suppose if we believe in transgenerational trauma and in the kind of ancestry of archetypes, what it means to be a white woman in a therapy role. And that's something, a very early journey that I'm on, and that I am excited and fearful. I'm ready to continue for the rest of my career. I will wrap it up because of time, but just thank you again to all of the women in this panel, and to all of the women who have come before us, and the men who have contributed to that as well. Thank you.
Ellie, thank you very much. It's wonderful to have your voice as a current student, so thank you. Thanks for your comments. That's great. Now I want to turn to Jodie Blosker. Where are you, Jodie? Yeah.
Hello, thank you all. So yes, my name is Jodie Blosker, and I work with Helen at the Cambridge Institute for Music Therapy Research. And I am a music therapist, and I'm also a PhD student at CIMTR. So first of all, yeah, just to reiterate, thank you all so much for your presentations this evening, and also for the work that you've done throughout your careers, both as practitioners as well as researchers in music therapy and drama therapy. So it's clear that you've opened so many pathways for women in their careers, and I think this is especially important as we recognize that we are in a profession that is dominated by women. So what I wanted to sort of, I suppose, put to the panel, which you can ask later when we have the discussion, maybe address these things, is I've been thinking about the British Association for Music Therapy has recently done a diversity report. So they've highlighted sort of 2 things, which is one, they pointed out that there's even though we have a lot of women in music therapy, there's a disproportionate number of men that are that are in the leadership positions in the field. So my first question is sort of around how do you think women can be supported in pursuing leadership in academic roles? And particularly thinking about how this is important now, as we've all heard the news reports about how the pandemic has had such a big impact on women due to shouldering more care responsibilities and more likely to be in insecure work. So we can sort of think about what an impact this may have had on our field due to the fact that it is predominantly women. So yeah, just thinking about whether that's challenges you've had to overcome in your own careers that maybe can support women now, but also practical advice that might be helpful. And then the other thing taken from the report is that, which I think many of us have identified today, is that our field, especially in the UK, is dominated by white middle-class women. And so the second sort of question that I have for you is another big question, is where do you see the future of music therapy in terms of looking at equality and diversity in both academic and leadership roles, but also within training programs and the profession as a whole? Essentially, what do you think needs to be done to make our field more accessible?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jodie. Okay, I think we've just got a couple of minutes. I wonder if anybody's got any really quick responses to Jodie there. Inga.
I think that the one thing is that we have to be aware of acknowledging each other's talents as women, not always compare ourselves with men when thinking about being leaders. That's the one thing. And then to stand up for our talents, our qualities as women, also when we go for leadership positions. Just shortly.
Thank you very much. Yes, yes. Andrew.
Very, very brief. One of the things that comes to my mind, it took me some years to really realize that looking at reference lists in articles, what kind of gender do you, are you aware of the gender at all? Yeah. Very many books I've seen is 75% of the reference list belongs to the men. And that's okay. It's if that is the reference you're going to use. I just wanted to raise our awareness of what kind of references we choose, and yeah, that's for now.
No, thank you very much, Gru. And of course, there's an issue around references in books, around culture as well. You know, what are all the references in articles just from a white Western culture, for example? So yes, thank you. That's I think thank you for both those points. That's great. Just move on to Claire Molyneux, who Helen has already introduced, but I'll introduce again as our third respondent. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, yeah, thank you everybody for some incredibly inspirational presentations. I will be brief because there are some very interesting questions here that it would be nice to have some responses to. And I think that the things that stood out to me are determination and encouragement and authenticity, a call to be ourselves. And I just wanted to share very briefly a concept that I came across in years of living and working in New Zealand. Ako is a Maori concept that means to teach and to learn, and it recognises that teaching and learning is a reciprocal experience, and that it's something that enables us to build caring and inclusive learning communities. And I think that's certainly been my experience of the music therapy community, and now being part of the wider community at Anglia Ruskin that includes drama therapy as well. And I think it's something that is also represented here in the panel that we have with our wonderful leaders here. and in the inclusion of, you know, someone like Ellie, who is coming to the end of her training and about to qualify. And maybe if we can authentically take that reciprocity out with us, we can continue to teach and learn with that value held in each of those experiences. The question, if I may, Rachel, not wanting to steal your role, the question that is I'd really love to hear some thoughts about is this question from Fliss about addressing the barriers to becoming leaders in the field, and I'd really love to hear some responses to that. Rachel, we can't hear you.
I don't know if everyone can see Felicity Alwell's question here, but she writes, my question is, you didn't really address barriers to becoming leaders in your field. To be a professor in music therapy takes money, to learn an instrument, to own an instrument, to train, to further train for 2 years, to be in therapy, and then to build your career on what are now short-term precarious contracts. What can we do about this? Are there any responses to that big question?
Can I just kick off?
Yeah, go.
I think it's a really, really important, serious question. And some of us in the UK were lucky enough to grow up and move into a time, I think it's around the 70s and 80s, when everybody had free music lessons in school, for example. You know, there were many, many initiatives that were cut and don't happen now. So my wish, in an answer to your question, is that music and specific music lessons and instruments should be provided. And that obviously is not that realistic, perhaps, in this culture, although there is, you know, more recognition about the arts being something so central and important. But that would be my wish. As in terms of addressing it, I think we have to just keep putting pressure on funders and really sort of attempt to hope that there could be more access. But I think, you know, you are right. One can't disagree with that point. So that would be my opening thought about that.
Thank you very much. And any other thoughts? Okay, Gru.
I think there are many ways to address the fact that there is a glass ceiling, which you have to crash in a way. But I think it's two ways of being a leader. One way is to be a powerful person. Another way is to be an influential person. And there are many ways of being influential. Personally, I've always been thinking, when I've had different kind of leadership roles, I shouldn't be in these roles too long. It's my job, in a way, to try to promote other people to take over, not in my style, but not stand in the way of people. And I know that's very different institutions. If you have a person, I headed the Center for Research in Music and Health for 7 years, and I was so privileged because the person working closest to me was a person really scholarly and really, I knew she would be a new wonderful leader. So how could my point was then, how could I try to not stand in the way, but support? And also allow my experience to flow on to other people, those being interested. And I know very well I didn't answer how I became a leader, but there are so many ways to finding your way. And one of you talked about authenticity. I think we have to follow our personal way of leadership, and also be the style of leader that belongs to us, not trying to be something else. I truly also mean that it's important to recognize these leadership structures that leaves women out of leadership. This invisible structures, but you know they are there, and be aware of them, and talk out loud about them. How we can, well, I call it crash the glass ceiling.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We've hardly got time, but I just wondered if Cheryl, you might like to respond to Alex Street's question, which is, I'm just going to summarise, Alex, which is something along the lines of, is it something to do with the competitive environment in academia that gets in the way of support, mutual support? That's a very brief summary, Alex.
Well, I'd just like to say that if we talk about all the pressures of academia as enabling us not to support colleagues, I think it's we're going in the wrong direction. I think, yes, there are lots of pressures, but I think this all comes down to ethical standards and keeping our focus on the students. And when that happens, when everyone is equally focused on the students, then there is inevitably support. And I learned that from Ken Grouchy. And I think that, yes, there are many things that can detract you, but if you focus on the students, then you need to support each other. And that's the reason for doing it.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have some other questions here, but I think we've run out of time, Helen, haven't we? So it just leaves me to say thank you so much for all your questions. Thank you so much to the speakers for all your thoughts and such rich presentations in very short amounts of time. And thank you to the respondents and to CIMTR and Sarah Crabtree for her support. So thank you all. It's a great evening. Bye for now.
Just quickly before we end as well, just a reminder that after the webinar you will be sent a survey, and it'll be great to hear from everyone with feedback to inform our future events. We'll also be delighted to have you join us for our next webinar on Monday the 22nd of March at 5:30. We will be presenting a Homeside Roundtable, participant experiences in a randomized control trial examining music and reading interventions for people living with dementia and their caregivers. And this will be with panelists Professor Helen Odell-Miller, Jodie Bloska, Caroline Bone, Jonathan Poole, and Ming Hung Soo, who are all part of the Homeside research that we are doing. And you'll be sent more information about this and the link to register in follow-up emails and in the next couple of weeks. So we hope to see you all then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Rachel, as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah and Rachel.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.